man. My law firm is Herman Law. And we called this press conference today to announce the filing of 2 lawsuits against La Petite Academy. These lawsuits deal with 2 babies who were sexually abused by Mark Mays, a teacher that worked at La Petite in 2015. Parents expect that daycares are going to be safe places for their children. Parents have to rely on daycares to follow safety rules to ensure that their kids are going to be safe. The parents that I represent in these cases expected that La Petite would do a proper and a safe background check on Mark Mays' employment before they hired him. They expected that since Mark Mays was fired from 2 different daycares he had worked at for crossing boundaries with children, that he would not be hired to work at La Petite Academy as a teacher. The parents expect that after Mark Mays was hired, even though he shouldn't have been, that when he was caught kissing a little girl and having her sit in his lap, that he would have been terminated. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. We now know from Mark Mays' own words that he raped babies as young as 1 year old at La Petite Academy and Little Hands. Unfortunately, we know from Mark Mays' own words is that there are several victims. The families I represent both had 1-year-old girls who were in La Petite, and Mark Mays has confessed that while he was changing their diapers, he sexually molested these little girls. We know that the police, when they issued a search warrant and recovered Mark Mays' telephone, that they found a photograph of a young girl's vagina, a baby's vagina, that was taken per a geotag at this location on July 5th, 2015. We also know from Mark Mays' computer that they recovered images of young girls' vaginas that were being penetrated by a finger and partially by a penis. These are dark cases. This is a man, Mark Mays, who is a pedophile, who has admitted raping babies. This is a man that we allege La Petite Academy hired without doing a proper employment background check. And unfortunately, these families and these babies now will have to live with this the rest of their lives. I filed also another claim in these lawsuits on behalf of the parents. What I filed was called an intentional infliction of emotional distress on behalf of the parents of these babies. And the reason I did that is because the facts of this case are so outrageous that I think, as we allege in the complaints, that these parents have their own damages. What we know is that both of these moms told the school when Mark Mays was first hired that they did not want Mark Mays changing their little girls' diapers. They were uncomfortable with Mark Mays. And they told the school, and the school promised that Mark Mays would not change these little girls' diapers. Well, according to Mark Mays, in his video confession to the police, he says that at some point, one of the little girls needed a diaper change. And he knew he wasn't allowed to change her diaper. So he saw the teacher, Miss Diana, who was having a conversation with the director, Miss Lisa, and he motioned them to come over. And they came over. And he said to Diana, this little girl needs a diaper change, and as you know, I'm not allowed to change her diaper. Her mom requested that I not change the diaper. Well, the teacher told Mark Mays, don't worry about it, just go ahead and change her diaper anyways. Mark Mays says that he told her, well, the mom's going to know, because they have these daily sheets, and whoever changes the diaper signs it. And the teacher told Mark Mays, don't worry about it, we'll put my name down on the sheet and the mom will never know. Mark Mays then says he then changed that little girl's diaper and sexually assaulted her. So we have filed these claims on behalf of the parents, in addition to the claims for the assaults on behalf of these young girls. When you have to trust somebody to enforce safety rules, you have to believe that institutions are going to follow safety rules. It's like when we go on an airplane, we have to trust that the pilot is going to follow safety rules. Or you're in a hospital, you have to trust, or your loved one, that the hospital is going to follow safety rules. When they don't, and they don't follow basic safety principles, bad things can happen. I'll take any questions you have.
Why were the parents leery of Mays in the beginning?
Well, one of the moms said when they first hired him, she saw him, and she went up to talk to him, and he acted strange. She wouldn't look her in the eyes, and she got a bad vibe. You know, called mother's intuition. I think, this guy we now know is a pedophile, and she got a bad vibe, and felt uncomfortable with him. And so struggled with that, but said, you know what, I don't want this, I'm going to protect my child. And said, she even spoke to friends about it, and because she said, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I feel really bad saying I don't want this man near my girl, but her friend said, it's your baby. You got to protect her.
Had he been arrested before or anything on his record to...
No arrests I'm aware of, other than the only thing that I'm aware of relative to this would be these being fired from I think it's called Millard Public Schools, if I said that correctly, if I pronounced that correctly. They have a Kid Network program. They said they fired him because he kept crossing boundaries with kids. I've seen those records. They had written him up several times for crossing boundaries with kids. Finally, they caught him giving his address and inviting a little girl to come over to his house. So they fired him. They said he was not rehirable, and that if someone would have asked them, they would have said he's not rehirable. He was also fired from a child care program at St. Andrew's Church. And at that program, he crossed boundaries with kids. He kept putting kids on his laps, even though he was told not to. These are all red flags that trained professionals who work with kids know about. And so when they see adults crossing boundaries with kids in these red flag behaviors, you remove them from working with kids. Which is why he never should have been hired in the first place to work at Petite Academy.
Was there anything else in his background that said he shouldn't have been hired, or were those the main instances?
Well, those were the main things, plus once he was hired here, like it was, I think he was hired at the very end of May, and I believe on June 4th there was a notation in his file where he was caught kissing a little girl and holding her. I mean, in my opinion, that red flag is enough for you to terminate him.
What are you asking for damages, or what are you hoping for?
Well, ultimately, the jury will decide. I believe these cases have significant damages. Anytime a child's abused, I think the damages are well into the millions of dollars. In this case, I think we're looking at an 8-figure number, meaning well over $10 million. These are the worst kind of assaults. I mean, these are assaults on babies, and so we also will be looking for punitive damages in these cases.
How many lawsuits have you filed then, Jeff?
So I filed these 2 today against La Petite. I have another one that's already pending dealing with Mark Mays at Little Hands. And I expect to be filing a 3rd lawsuit against La Petite in the coming week.
On behalf of who or against who?
Another child, another little girl who Mays has admitted sexually abusing here at the daycare.
Have they responded to you at all, or have you heard from La Petite or Little Hands yet?
Well, in Little Hands, we've actually been litigating that case and taking depositions, and so we're well into that. So yes, we've heard from them through their lawyers, but I haven't spoken to anybody at La Petite yet.
Were you able to interview Mays or anything along those lines?
No, we will. What we have is certainly the police records and his interview, his confession.
Did the parents reach out to you then, or how did this fall to you?
Yeah, so I do these cases all over the country, and initially the first family, they Googled sex abuse attorney, I guess. That's how they found me. So I do a lot of daycare and preschool cases.
In your experience, how significant is this case? How troubling is this case?
To me, this is as dark as it gets. I mean, I've done over 1,000 sex abuse cases in my career, and I will say, in my opinion, I don't know I've ever seen that I can recall where there's been a man fired from multiple locations for being inappropriate, for crossing boundaries with kids, where he was hired at a daycare. And then, of course, their ages are so young. These girls were 1 year old. And you add on to the fact that there's no question it happened, because Mark Mays, is an admitted pedophile, he admitted raping babies. So it's up there in terms of the scale of outrageousness.
And you believe the warning signs were there for
Yeah, I mean, I have some of their school records, and from their own records we have, as we allege in the complaint, on June 4th, 2015, there's a notation to Mark Mays that he was reprimanded for holding a girl and kissing her. That's a red flag that says take action. That's what red flags are. To me, that's like an airplane where the red light's going off. It's something you have to respond to. You don't ignore it. Bad things happen when you ignore it. Then you add in this case, where if they had contacted the schools and had done background checks, they would know he was not rehirable and that he was not safe to work with kids because he was crossing boundaries. When you're worried about a man crossing boundaries with little kids, you're worried that he might be a pedophile. And so you don't risk the lives of little kids.
What is the goal of these lawsuits? What do the families want out of this?
So there's no magic wand. We all know that. They can't undo what happened. All they can do is seek a measure of justice for their kids. Okay, and a measure of justice in our society is compensation, it's damages, it's money for those girls who are going to need help potentially the rest of their lives. But it's also, we want answers. We want to know from La Petite as to why he was hired given his background. Why was he hired? Given the fact that he was fired from his 2 previous daycares that he worked at for crossing boundaries with kids. We want to know why they let him change these little girls' diapers when they promised the families that he would not. So part of it is to get answers.
Based on your experience in these type of cases, should an adult have been alone with a child like this? Is there some type of protocol that's different compared to other daycares?
Well, yeah, I think safe practices are that you always have the 2 adult rule. That you have 2 adults with the kids. You don't let men alone in the bathroom with little kids. That's my opinion. There's state guidelines and county guidelines that are vary from place to place in terms of the ratios, how many adults have to be with kids. And so, to me, just because you're in compliance with the state ratio doesn't mean you're as safe as you can be. And so, yeah, but we don't even have to get there in this case because this guy never should have been hired in the first place.
I've sat through civil cases like this, mostly for child death, where they had a lot of instances where this person shouldn't have been hired before they ended up handling a child, and the jury ended up more or less saying that there was no fault of whether it be the website or the company that held it before. Are you confident that a jury would find that there's proof that this guy should never have continued on? I mean, even with his previous instances.
Well, yeah, based on what we're alleging in the complaint, I'm extremely confident. My investigators have already spoken to some of the previous employers, and so we know what their position is and what they're going to say. And so, yeah, I would say I'm extremely confident.
Based on your previous cases, what is the typical outcome of something like this? What is the compensation? What is that like? What comes out of it?
Yeah, of course, every case is different. In my opinion, anytime a child's sexually abused, the damages are well into the millions of dollars. There is no number that you could ever really, fairly compensate. It's hard, but we do believe the damages are significant, and ultimately we'll leave it in the jury's good hands to decide what that is. I'll be asking for a large number.
Is this are all these La Petites owned by this? Are this a franchise operation, or are they?
My understanding is that they're corporate owned. The company is out of Michigan. They actually, the parent company that owns them owns 5 brands, large brands. They're one of the top 2 or 3 daycare providers in the country. They may have some franchises. I don't know specifically about that, but my understanding this is corporate owned.
Can you tell us how these alleged victims are doing? Have they moved away? What type of counseling or what kind of things?
Right. Well, yeah, it's a good question because every child's different, of course, and you really have two different things going on with these babies. One of them is already showing signs of abuse and is acting out in a way with symptoms that you see with kids are abused. There's certain behaviors that the experts tell us that you might see associated with sexual abuse. So one of these kids, and when the parents look back now, they realize, unfortunately, that she was exhibiting some of these signs even before. For example, when they went to change her diaper, she developed this thing where she would close her legs really tightly and wouldn't let her parents change her diaper properly. Of course, they didn't think anything of it. Now when they look back, they're horrified as to why that might be. So there's behaviors. The other child's not seeing particular behaviors yet. And sex abuse is the kind of thing you don't know when and if it will ever come out. It's the kind of thing that what happens is you go through milestones in life, and sometimes this underlying subconscious abuse plays out and it impacts a child. It may be that we ask the jury in the one case to say, we don't know whether this child will need this significant care, but this is her only one chance to be compensated. And so who should take the risk? Should the school pay that money now and hope that she never needs it, or not pay it, not receive the money, and then if she needs it, she can't get it? Well, we believe that the school should take that risk because they risk the safety of these babies.
So how did these families find out initially that